So in the next 19 minutes and 30 seconds or so, I'm going to talk to you about enabling retail without boundaries. But first, I just wanted to take a few moments to comment on the previous panel, as I sometimes feel compelled to do, and I just can't help myself. Bill talked about the role of the store in the new operating model. That is absolutely the key element of this entire discussion. There was a little going back and forth between Bill and my friend Karen from John Lewis. I think one of the things you should look out for this afternoon, I believe, Karen, is what John Lewis is doing as relates to making the store part of the whole omni-channel framework of the customer value proposition. I think you'll find that to be a quite powerful discussion. They actually achieved 30% penetration in sales as opposed to some other numbers that have been bantied around. So I think what they're doing is really spot on, and you'll get a lot out of that discussion. There was another discussion around mass marketing is dead. I'm not quite sure I completely agree with that. I think there'll be all sorts of marketing that occur. I would hope that my biggest client that lives in Bentonville, Arkansas, doesn't believe that. But that being said, I do think there will be shades of gray in marketing, and we have to know, based upon our own categories, our own customer types, what is the specific type of marketing we want to take to a specific client at a specific time, as retail is becoming more and more time sensitive and location sensitive, as well as time insensitive, because I just need to go refill some Colgate toothpaste, which is kind of a mass marketing thing. So I think there's going to be gray in all of that, and I don't think we should lose sight of that. And then the final thing that I want to comment on is this notion of experimentation, which retail doesn't get, and it's what's going to kill retail, in my opinion. You heard the speaker talk about how Amazon does thousands of experiments per day. That means they're learning thousands of times per day. And retailers are experimenting 12 times a year, which means they learn 12 times a year. So who is going to learn faster? So the question on the new retail operating model is, how do you evolve so that you can test more frequently, so that you can learn more frequently, so that you can learn faster? So I think that is, if there's no other takeaway that you have today, other than what I'm going to say right after that, it is learn to experiment more. My key take-homes are that the UK is ahead of the US in terms of its evolution towards an omni-channel model. Its customers are clearly more advanced than the US as relates to that. That being said, the Asian marketplace is clearly ahead of the European marketplace and ahead of the UK marketplace in terms of its adoption of new digital media technologies. So there's a difference between the adoption of the technologies on an incremental basis versus the integrated model that has really begun to take shape here in the UK. And so I can learn from what's going on in Asia. I can learn from what's going on in the UK. I actually have UK clients, so that helps me to learn faster. And then I can apply that into North America. And in my role as running global consulting, I really need to understand what's going on a global basis and being able to take learnings from different geographies and apply them appropriately. Now, the title of the presentation is called Enabling Retail Without Boundaries. And so I have been in the internet, e-commerce, multi-channel, omni-channel space since 1996, and I will confess that I hate the term omni-channel. I hate the term multi-channel. It is one channel, your brand. I don't think that British Air refers to themselves as a multi-channel airline, even though they have kiosks and they have call centers and they have a mobile site, but they refer to themselves as British Airways. You don't hear of multi-channel banks, even though we have ATMs and online and all sorts of things we can do with banks. So my hope is that over time, we can use omni-channel as a way of getting back to the brand and the customer promise as being centroid and integrate across all of the capabilities of being a retailer and delivering the value proposition back to them. It's quite simply, it's going back to the old general store, or the store general manager knew every customer was walking in and knew exactly what type of top hat. That's kind of where we want to go back to over time. So with that, as they prelude the discussion, let's talk about a shopper survey that my company did. We do it every year. We do it globally. We did it in the UK, we did it in Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, and of course we did it in North America because that's where I live. The idea of the shopper study was to determine factually what customers believed, behaved, or what their attitude was concerning different elements of this emerging retail model. And so you can see that we did it with the typical breakout of customers with one exception. The breakout was 70-30 female. Can anybody here tell me why a proper retail study needs to be 70-30 female? This is the interactive part of the discussion. I'm sorry? Males don't shop. 70% of all decisions about shopping are made by females. So that's why we oriented it towards females. Now, obviously, that's not quite true in electricals because we all know that our children tell us what to do in electricals, but that's another story. And by the way, in the United States, we don't call it electricals, we call it consumer electronics, but I'm in London, so I'm defaulting towards you. And you'll notice that I actually have all the spellings correct as well. So as an example, let me go find an example, just so you know that I'm not misbehaving. I'll find an example here. There's got to be one. There's got to be one.
Personalized.
I'm sorry?
Personalized.
Oh, there you go. See, I did it right. So there you go. So let's go back to the top. This is an important slide. So if I'm a store operator and I see that 75% of all shopping trips occur inside the store, I might feel warm and fuzzy about that. But if you look at the trend, and the trend is always your friend, the trend 3 or 4 years ago, that number would have been 90%. The trend 3 or 4 years ago, if you'd have looked at consumables versus specialty, that would have said something like 97% versus 85%. So if the trend is your friend, then this new retail operating model is a must because your shoppers are undergoing fundamental shift in how they're shopping you. So if this is a 3 to 4 year shift, let's go through a decade, 10 years from now. What is this shift going to look like? And do you as retailers have enough time to completely retool your arsenals so that 40 or 50% of your transactions are occurring inside of the store? What does that mean in terms of how you staff a store now? What does that mean in terms of how you stock a store? What does that mean in terms of how you train your store labor to go to a model where they're trying to drive sales into a geographic area versus the physical store itself? So something to think about. By the way, I completely agree with what Bill said earlier. UK shoppers are far ahead of North American shoppers as relates to online. So therefore, you shouldn't listen to a word I say because I'm an American. That was supposed to be a joke. You can laugh at that. So, but UK shoppers are 3 times more likely to shop grocery online as compared to American shoppers. Now, that's obvious because Americans have these big refrigerators that store things for 3 weeks. And when I was here for 2 weeks with my friends, they had this really tiny refrigerator, so they had to go refill every day. So I kind of get that. And UK leads in terms of electronic shopping via the online channel, which actually I did not expect. But that has shifted over the last few years. So just some things to think about in terms of your own prioritization. The second thing, in the US anyhow, 20 to 30% of our P&L is invested in store labor. And yet, the highest source of dissatisfaction across the globe, not just United States, and as well as in the UK, the highest sort of dissatisfaction is store associates. So we're making a lot of investments in all of these great widgets, but we're not making as many investments in the store associate as this new retail operating model is changing. So how are you going to bring the store associate along in this journey? How are you going to retrain them? How are you going to educate them around new policies and procedures and technologies that deliver that value proposition to the consumer that you're looking for? So going down to the bottom that you can't see because of the chairs, you see that the number one feature that UK shoppers want is personalized in-store experiences delivered through a number of various means, whether it be through an associate or through technology. The second thing they're looking for is interactive experiences. You're going to see a very interesting demonstration by Perch in the back, which begins to get to an interactive experience with products and consumers that I think represents potentially where the future of shopping is going. And then consistent information is third. So let's break those 3 things down. To have a personalized in-store experience, to go back what Bill talked about, you have to have one view of the customer. If you don't have one view of the customer, if you're not on that journey to deliver one view of the customer, you can't be an omni-channel retailer by definition. So to me, the brand is the channel. So whether you are John Lewis or Tesco or Morrison's, that's your brand. And you've got multiple touch points to the customer that you interact with. And so you're delivering your brand through those touch points. But your channel is still John Lewis now, or Tesco or Waitrose. I often use the example of a bank or an airline. Again, they have multiple touch points, but you don't refer to them as an omni-channel bank. You don't refer to them as an omni-channel airline. You refer to them as Barclays. You refer to them as British Air. In the same way, I want our clients, I want our customers to refer to John Lewis as John Lewis. Interactive experiences. That means you need to have a consistent view of rich media and product information that you can distribute to the store or online. It's got to be consistent. So how are you going to go about that? Finally, consistent information. How are you going to have a product information backstop that has all of your information, product information, promotion information fused so that when a consumer wants to consume it, regardless of where they're located, they can get it? And I'm already over time, so I need to go faster. So we'll skip that. The basics still matter. These are the top 3 things that shoppers want. The basics still matter. Competitive price and promotions, right product selection, customer service. We all know this, but here's the problem. Let's compare what shoppers want versus what you told us in a second survey. Shoppers want competitive pricing, right product selection, and quality customer service. You said, this is UK, you said we're focused on quality customer service, brand impression, which was last, and personalizing the shopper experience. So there's a gap between what shoppers are asking for and what you are delivering to them. So something to think about. The next thing, the role of the store associate. Again, the store associate role is changing in this new world. So 3 things that they're responsible for. Being a product advisor, they're failing at that miserably. The shopper is coming in with far more information about not only your products, but your competitors' products. So this goes back to the notion that you're investing 20 to 30% of your P&L in your store associates, but they're failing you on the front door. Help locating products. They're doing okay at that. And resolve in-store issues. Once it becomes a task-oriented element of what they do, the store associate is fine. But as it goes up towards a knowledge-based interaction, they begin to fail. So how are you going to change your training regime in order to respond to that? This is an interesting slide. The store associate largely fails as a product advisor. For specialty, they want to go online or they want to go to Amazon. What does this mean? For specialty retailers, you're outsourcing product information distribution to Amazon, which means you're becoming more and more of a commodity, which means Bill's strategy of going towards private label so that he doesn't have to compete against Amazon is actually the correct strategy. But if you're going to sell product that your other retail competitors are going to sell, you're outsourcing to Amazon here. If you're on the consumables side, again, your store associates aren't helping you. Now, if you go to my Kroger store in Atlanta, Georgia, you would say, where's the store associate in the first place? But that's another story. The primary role of the store associate. Customers want your store associates to help them in this new world. Because despite the fact that they are armed with more information than ever, they still have an assumption, they have a primary assumption that when they walk into the store and they see somebody with a blue shirt or a red shirt on representing your brand, that person's going to be able to help them. 43%, when they can't find what they want to go to a store associate. That represents an opportunity for differentiation because we saw how bad store associates are performing. So if you can crack the code on bringing forward your store associates in this omni-channel world, then you stand a chance at winning. And I think, again, back to some of the things that John Lewis is doing, they're going down this path of enabling their partners, their associates, to be relevant in this new world. This is what happens when you allow one of your consultants to make a slide. They make something that's unintelligible. So we'll skip it. I can explain it, but we're almost out of time. We're going to skip the videos, by the way, in lieu of time, so we're not going to go through the videos. So let's talk about what they want. Shoppers say they want special treatment in the store based upon loyalty. That means you need to have a loyalty program. It means you need to have integrated customer data, back to what Bill said. They want offers delivered to a store that are personalized. That means you have to have strong control of your product information. They want to have acknowledgement of status as a highly valued customer while in the store. That means your store needs to become an element of your omni-channel program. Well, how are you going to enable that when the store isn't real-time in terms of information? How many of you have perpetual inventory information inside of the store that is accurate? Not very many. I've run into about 2 retailers that have really accurate in-store perpetuals. And if you don't have perpetual inventory, how can you offer up an offer to a customer based upon what it is that they're looking for, because you can't guarantee the type of product that they're going to get in terms of its availability. So the primary role of store associates, this is what you said. You said 62.5% of you, this is a UK statement, say store associate influence is decisive. But the shopper is saying that they don't like the store associate interaction. But you're saying it's decisive. So again, a gap. What are you going to do to fix that? Personalizing the shopper experience. They say that they don't want to give away personal information tied to their personal property. I would say this is changing. I would say that this is something that is a latent demand. If the more you give away value, the more information they will give back to you. If you'd have taken this survey, actually, when we did take this survey 2 years ago, all of this was even further left. So as you give them more value, they will give you more information. It's got to be a value proposition as opposed to you just asking for when they were born and how many kids they have, right? I'm here today to be a presenter to the conference Future Retail and trying to understand from an attendee perspective trends that are going on in the industry from a payments perspective, a mobility perspective, a customer perspective, how the role of the store is changing in an omni-channel world, and then from my own perspective, being able to deliver back to the conference attendees our view of what's going on with the customer and with the store and how this new omni-channel model is really evolving into becoming the dominant operating model that retailers will need to ascribe to in order to make sure that they are relevant coming into the 21st century. Personalization techniques. We have the Walmart model. Hi, how are you doing when you walk inside the store? Which doesn't do very much for you. You have the acknowledgement of high-value customers. And, oh, by the way, let me set the slide. This is what you said you're doing. So the acknowledgement walking inside the store, acknowledging high-value customers, special treatment based upon loyalty, and personalized offers delivered in-store. So this is what retailers are doing. So, and 33% of you are focusing on what the customer is saying is their number one request. Something to think about. The mobile store associate. Going mobile can help service and personalization. So this is what you said. 50% of you, 48.7% of you, have no plans on mobile device deployment. Now let's go back to the core proposition we said earlier, which is that shoppers are coming in more sophisticated, and you have to figure out how to deliver better training and communication to your associates in order for them to be more relevant when a shopper walks in. So in the era of 50, 75, 100, and 150% attrition inside of a store, probably one of the only ways you're going to be able to deliver institutional information to the store so that store associate can become relevant and reduce time to competency so that they can service a customer more quickly is through delivery of information and training on a mobile device so that during those slack periods when they're on the store floor, they can learn about new products that are coming into the market or new promotions that are coming to the market. So there's 50% that aren't, there's 50% that are. My hypothesis has been for a long time that we're going to have a bifurcated market in terms of retailers that make it and retailers that don't. And retailers that make it are going to be those that are going to invest correctly in the use of digital marketing techniques, both to the customer as well as to their own associates, that enable them to spring into the 21st century. So what does it all mean? The first thing it means is that one, you have to align your priorities with the customer. I think we've seen, and this is a 90-minute presentation that I just crushed in 15 minutes, so there's a lot of other information. But one, I see time and time again that clients are not aligning their priorities with the customer. And I think I've shown you factually a number of examples where that is the case also in the UK. Number two, the fundamentals still matter. By the way, this presentation will be made available to all of you, so you can get it from the hosts. But the fundamentals still matter. You still got to get pricing, product, promotion, service right. Oh, by the way, for an omni-channel world, there are 5 things you have to get right. This is something you can write down. There are 5 things you have to get right. You've got to get the customer right. One view of the customer. You've got to get inventory right. One view of inventory across all nodes, DC, store, third parties. One view of inventory. One view of orders in an omni-channel world, because your customer service center has to be able to support a customer that has purchased both in-store as well as online, as well as on the mobile, as well as in a social channel. One view of orders. One view of product. Why? Because in the world that Bill was talking about earlier, we have the online channel and we have the store channel. And those two things don't meet in terms of merchandising and buying and sourcing. Yet in tomorrow's world, the customer wants them to be integrated. So the rich media that you see in the online world has to be merged with the static media or the static information in your traditional product information management tools. So guess what? Your product information management tool is probably out of date. You've got to look at that in order to have one view of product information that you can distribute to any channel. And then finally, a unified payment infrastructure. You got to be able to enable payments in the mobile world, the online world, the catalog world, the store world. It's all got to be integrated because, again, that customer service rep, whether it's virtual or in store, needs to be able to have a complete view of the customer. All their transactions, all of the product, everything that customer has done with you. So, and then finally, there always has to be an answer, right? There's always a punchline, and I'm getting my hook that I'm out of time for, and I have to go to questions. But this is a model that we are putting together to help our clients think through that. What are the issues that need to be resolved? Because it's one thing to have the right organizational model. It's another thing to have the right process model. It's a third thing to have the right requirements. But if you don't answer the policy, are you going to allow an online purchase inside of a store? As an example, some stores don't allow the return of earrings that were purchased inside of a store. But if they are purchased online, by law, you have to allow a return. So now you've got 2 different return policies. In an omni-channel